Hello there, my name is Nino Zama and this is My ANC TV. Now, ANC President Jacob Zuma has just delivered his January 8th statement and he joins us now to discuss this further. Mr. President, thank you for joining us on My ANC TV.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
If you can just take us through the statement, your January 8th statement, what would you say have been some of the highlights, the key points that were important to you?
Well, firstly, it was important to remind people that we have traveled a long way. We are 100 years. Many things are 100 years these days in South Africa. We needed to remind people, the ANC itself, the union building, many other things. We also thought it was important to highlight one of the major problems that faces this country, the question of inequality and poverty. And part of this was in fact triggered by the Land Act of 1913, and this year is 100 years in June, to say this has come and is an issue we need to look at, because we don't need to look around. What is that makes people so much majority to be poor? Why such inequality? This was a very deliberate act that was undertaken when people wanted labor, and they wanted people to come out to the mines and other industrial things. And therefore they said, how could we get them out? And the discovery or the research was that as long as they've got land and cattle and everything, they're not going to leave. And therefore there was a specific recommendation that the land must be taken away from them. So we are talking about a very deliberate thing that happened, that therefore created the problem that are sitting with us today. And therefore, how do we redress that? Those are the issues, particularly because it's 100 years. We've got to do something, because if we don't address it, we are likely to remain with this problem for all the time, because the population has grown. So we thought that highlight was very, very important, but also the question of the economic transformation, and so to speak, the second kind of phase of our liberation, wherein we are saying we need to fight and get to a situation where there's economic freedom, so that there's the monopoly that is there, that is entrenched. How do we deal with it so that the economy of this country benefits everybody else? These are the issues, some of the issues we thought it was important to highlight generally, but we also dealt with the issues of the organization. Well, there has been, in some way, some tendencies that are alien to the organization, the kind of behavior that people have been undertaking, to say that can no longer be allowed. We've got to take action for people who are doing wrong things, people, for an example, who bring factionalism, people who use money to buy favors and support in the ANC, people who do things that, in a sense, bring the ANC into disrepute, that we are no longer going to tolerate such things. We are going to act so that we are able to bring the ANC back to its position. We thought also we should highlight the question of the decision taken by the National Conference of the decade of the cadre that we are getting into, to say we've reached a point where we now have to deliberately create a cadre that is a cadre meant to deal with the kind of challenges of today, not the challenges of the struggle to liberate ourselves or to defeat apartheid, but the challenges of governance, perfect governance, people who could service the people, no longer to service them, to liberate them, but to actually deliver a prosperous South Africa, so to speak. How do we therefore emphasize on education, political education, academic education, training, bringing skills and everything, as to create the kind of a cadre, whether within the ANC or outside of the ANC, who are there to service the country. So these are the kind of issues we thought we needed to highlight in the statement, January 8th statement.
Mr. President, let us also zoom in on the leadership challenges that are currently facing the ANC Youth League. Malema was expelled. Makaka is supposed to be coming back after his one-year suspension. What is the mother body doing to assist the young lions?
Well, as you know, the mother body has been assisting, has been engaging. I think the engagement during the time of the names you mentioned was not easy, because they were also crowded by the ill discipline. That therefore, instead of dealing with how to help them, they had to face the processes of what you call ill discipline and the charges that were put to them, the processes of trying to deal with them, whether they were guilty or not guilty, etc. But of course that has in a sense destabilized the youth to some degree in terms of the leadership. And instead of dealing with the matter properly, the matter had to be dealt with again. And those, for an example, who were suspended at the beginning, they ended up being expelled. And therefore the crisis was bigger than the crisis that it was supposed to be. The leadership has been engaging all the time. But again, the youth had taken a particular attitude that was not helpful for the mother body to help. But we're continuing to help. But as you know, when we went to the conference, clearly, I think the youth had come to realize that, look, the path they were taking was not going to lead them anywhere. And therefore, they had to look at the reality. As you would know, conference specifically addressed the issue. And some people who were quite agitated in the conference, they were actually saying, let us take decision then. Let us disband the youth. But conference took a wise decision that no, the new incoming leadership must engage the youth so that we are able to assist the youth to move forward. And I think there is no problem because the youth at the moment, the interactions we've had with the youth, they are very clear that they are taking a position that must get back to what the objectives of the ANC Youth League are. So they are ready that we should meet, and they are ready not to take the old stance they've been taking, but the stance that is going to say how to enrich, how to help the ANC Youth League to do its job by attracting the younger people, by becoming a preparatory kind of school for the ANC cadres. I think that there's going to be no difficulty at all, that we are going to engage and we are going to make progress.
Okay, now let's talk about the service delivery protests that we've been seeing, and they paint a grim picture of unhappiness with government. Why should an ordinary South African continue to vote for the ANC? Absolutely,
because the ANC, I think, is the only organization with very clear policies and programs. I don't think there's any other organization that has. And therefore, people should continue voting for it. If they are not voting for the ANC, who will they vote for? For what? If they voted somebody else, for what? I think the reality is that people are looking at the ANC as an organization that must help solve the problems. It does have policies and solutions to do so. I don't think other people do have. But what I would want to say with regard to protests, people are looking at the protests from one point. They're not looking at it holistically for whatever reasons. What is it that makes people go for protests? If we made a comparison, South Africa, unlike any other country in the continent of Africa, in 18 years, we have delivered that no country that liberated itself that has delivered in the continent. Why there were no protests in the continent? I think people are failing to see one factor, that precisely because the ANC is delivering, that has created higher expectations to areas where delivery has not come, and therefore created a situation where people want the services now because they can see them happening in other areas. So these protests are not necessarily as a result of people saying there is nothing happening in the country, but is impatient and high expectation that in others saying, if you protest, it could come quicker. Some of the protests are actually political in a way, not the majority of them, but some of them, where people use them for political kind of thing. But this aspect people don't look at, that people are protesting because the expectations are high, are real, they can see things happening. So it's a kind of a problem which is there because of what is actually happening, there's delivery, which cannot be done overnight everywhere. And people know, but they would like it to come to their place as quickly as possible. So that's why the impatience, because they also know that if they acted, government is going to pay attention, it might come quicker. So it's not as if it is because people say there is nothing. It's because there is something and they would want it to come quicker. So these are demonstration or protests as a result of high expectations.
Okay, let's talk about now the legacy of the ANC. It's been 101 years. Where do you see the movement going from now onwards?
I think the ANC is going to go strong. It's going to grow very strong, and I think if you take the period from Polokwane to Mangaung, no organization that I know of that has doubled its membership within that period. Only the ANC has done so. I think that must be a very clear indication that the more the ANC exists, the more the people come to know the ANC, is the more they fall in love with it, is the more they understand it better, is the more they have got more hope in the ANC, is the more they see the ANC as their home. So the ANC is going to grow bigger, and the ANC is going to deliver more, and the ANC is going to take the center stage even more than any other time before. Why that happens is because people of this country know the ANC. They come very far with the ANC. They know that the ANC takes their interests very seriously, and it is there to ensure that their interests are catered for, and that in fact their lives are going to change if they were in the ANC, and that's why they would continue voting the ANC. And therefore, from now onward, it is going to be good for the ANC. No, it's not going to be bad. And in any way, the reality is that there's very little alternative. What is alternative? If you say the ANC must not, I can't be closer to the ANC, where are you going to go? I mean, the reality is that the ANC is the organization that discusses the matters of this country very seriously, and people understand it very well. That is why when the ANC has to have a conference, whether it's an NGC or a policy conference or elective conference, everybody in the country talks about it. The media, everybody else. Well, other people, nobody talks about their conferences because they've got nothing to offer in reality. The ANC has something to offer, and that's where the ANC is going to go.
Okay, Mr. President, as you are going to be moving into the second term now, what are some of the pressing issues that you're going to be focusing on this term?
I think these are the issues that we have just talked about. I think particularly the triple challenge that faces this country is one thing that where we've got it to spend sleepless nights. Poverty is too high, the unemployment too high, the inequality too high, and therefore what are the issues to deal with? That's why we are looking at a number of issues. We now have a plan, a national development plan, that tells us where we should be going, which is embraced by everybody in the country. But we have got other operational plans, like the economic growth, the new economic growth that is there, with very specific drivers, like infrastructure, etc. I think these are the things we're going to be doing. We are going to provide employment, which will begin to address the question of unemployment, but we're going to deal with the issue of inequality as well. Because the manner in which we are looking at the economy is an issue that we are saying, how do we intervene as a state to ensure that our economy begins to address the plight of the poor? So these are matters that we're going to be dealing with, not a legacy of an individual, but a legacy of the ruling party, the legacy of government.
Mr. President, thank you so much for talking to my ANC. We really appreciate you taking your time.
Thank you.
And that was ANC President Jacob Zuma talking to My ANC TV. My name is Nino Zama. Thank you for watching.